There you go. What's up?
All right. So personal protection equipment. Our objective for today is to cover this topic at a high level, more like a 30,000-foot level. We're not going to get into the details of the requirements of personal protection equipment as it applies to your specific site. It's going to be a general training. So we're going to describe the hierarchy of controls as it relates to PPE, identify the types of PPE utilized in industry, primarily general industry, explain PPE equipment and what is required for personal protection equipment, and explain the employer responsibilities. This is an important one for you managers and business owners regarding the PPE, and explain the employee's responsibility. And again, this is equally important. The employees have a definite responsibility as well. So the employer must protect the employee, assess the workplace. And this, to me, is the most important part of any safety program. You must have a legitimate, consistent evaluation process of any workplace. So if you're the owner or the manager, regular walkthroughs, regular assessments of your processes, whether you're a distribution center or a manufacturing of widgets, it should be inspected regularly. And I know it's difficult to do at times, especially when you're running a business, but it's something that needs to get done. So assessing the workplace, looking at the risks that you're having in terms of injuries, that's lagging data, but we want to focus more on proactive information. So we want to eliminate and reduce the hazards using engineering controls and administrative controls, then use appropriate PPE. But typically in the real world, PPE is the first thing that's looked at. This is the real world. In a perfect world, of course, we would use engineering controls or we would just eliminate the hazard. So PPE is the last line of defense. This is why it is so important that we have training regularly on personal protection equipment. I'm not saying annually, I'm saying regularly. We cannot trust that an employee is always going to use their PPE the way it's meant to be. So we need to have regular reminders, regular trainings, postings. We need to keep them accountable, because putting on your safety glasses in the production area is not optional. And if it is, then you need to fix that, because we can have a potential eye injury. So this is the hierarchy of controls. And again, the reality of this is most of the time we're starting off on the bottom. That's the reality. So what we want to do, if we have a new process coming up that we know is going to require, or we'll have some risk, then we want to use the hierarchy of control. So eliminating or substitution. Ideally, can we outsource it? Can we have another company do this high risk process for us, like in a plating shop? Can we have somebody put on, the chrome plating here, and then maybe send it to another area for paint, and then it can come back to us, and then we can give it to our client. So we're outsourcing it. That is something that will cost money and may not make sense for a lot of companies. I would say for most companies. And then engineering controls, of course, this is a really good way of designing a process to minimize the risk entirely. That is a wonderful way, a wonderful approach to do that. But yes, it does cost money and it requires some engineering. And then administrative controls are always good, rotating your shifts, minimizing the exposure for like sound, rotating someone from an area where the decibels are fairly high, 70 to 80. You want to maybe have them in there for an hour, rotate them to another area. So there's those kinds of controls that we can put into place, and they do work. Again, you're relying on people to manage that. And then of course this is where we end up with personal protection equipment. And again, you rely on the individual for doing it. Now the hierarchy of controls is elimination, which is ideal for some, but mostly it is something that it's just difficult to do if you want if you want to gain the most profit from any process you're doing. So it is the best way to, protect your employees. Looking for safer substances is always a good idea. And let's be honest here. I think most of us are doing this. I'd rather not use nitric acid at, a 30% concentration versus, a really, a 10%. I mean, of course, we want to use the safest chemical or no acid, but acid is acid and it does its job the way it needs to. So we always want to look for the safest way and the most cost-effective way. And that's just the way most manufacturing companies are doing things these days. Using different types of chemicals, different processes. So there's many ways to go about this, but usually not the first way. So engineering controls, or let me back up. Usually not the best way for from a frame of reference of a manufacturing process. Engineering controls are amazing. We can do some pretty cool things these days at not a lot of cost. I go into well over 200 different facilities a year, and I regularly see some pretty innovative stuff to protect employees. And it's usually aftermarket stuff. We had this process in place, we put in this engineering control, and now we basically eliminated the risk. Wonderful. I see that often. And then administrative controls, again, you're relying on people making decisions and choices and moving around production and just it is a burden. And I don't see this done very often in the companies that we go to, but it is something that is an option for us. It's mostly I mostly see this in environments that are very loud, maybe some dusty environments, and those are some things that we need to look at that. Does it make sense for our business? And again, this needs to be applied for site specific industries. What are you doing at your location? Does administrative controls make sense? Can you rotate your staff? Can you do special training? Can you do certain things that may mitigate some of the risk? And then, of course, we end up in personal protection equipment, where a lot of us we go here first. Maybe even after the fact, maybe after we get something in our eye, maybe we should put on some safety glasses. And this is not the best way to do that. But unfortunately, it is the way that most companies go. Sometimes to the extreme. It is very common that I'll go into a paint booth and they'll have a full face respirator on. And I'll ask them, how often are you painting? Oh, maybe once or twice a week for about 10, 15 minutes. Well, do you know what you're protecting yourself against? And say, oh, yeah, it just smells. And they have a full face respirator on. And they have very low VOC paint. There's nothing toxic in there. They have a really good paint booth, but yet they want to have a full face respirator on. Is that the right choice? Probably not. And most of the time it isn't. So we need to do a proper evaluation and get the proper personal protection equipment involved. Can you overprotect yourself and cause an injury? I've seen it done many, many, many times. So we want to have the right type of PPE if that's the route that we're going to go. And of course, we have various types of personal protection equipment. We have hard hats. So head protection is super important. You got to evaluate your area. Does it make sense to have head protection? And then what kind? What are we protecting ourselves from? If we have blocks of steel that are 500 tons, and we think that we should be wearing hard hats, and that hard hat will protect us, if that 500-ton block is going to land on our head, we're living in a dream. It just doesn't make sense. So we need to be practical about this. I've gone into too many facilities where they're protecting against something that will absolutely crush them. Hard hats aren't going to work. A job site where a tool can fall from scaffolding, of course, absolutely. Or maybe some strapping break or something minor would land on your head. Of course, hard hats are a great idea. And then you got to look at the type of hard hat. Um, you know, you have different classes of hard hats. What are you doing? What is the purpose of it? How much do we need to protect the face? Do we need to protect the eyes? You have a class G, which is a general one, to protect you against impact and low voltage. And then you got class E for electrical, and then class C for conductive. And so you have various types of uh, head protection. Then you have eye protection and face protection. So what would work the best for what we're doing? Welding is usually a simple process. You get a welding helmet. But then we see goggles and safety glasses. Well, why do we need goggles? Well, safety glasses work. Well, no, we have too many splashes. Well, goggles work, but they keep fogging up. So, well, face shield works. So there's a dance that we need to play with the different kinds of PPE to use and figure out which one is going to work the best for us and give us the most protection. Again, personal protection equipment fails. Sometimes it could even be the cause of the injury. So we want to take a common causes of eye injury are chemical splashes, um, bloodborne pathogens or potential blood splashes, or when intense lighting, dust. Uh, the worst eye injury I had was with a metal shaving. That was very severe, and chemical splashes. So eye and face protection must comply with these ANSI standards. And I don't have ANSI standards written in my glasses. These are not ANSI. These are not ANSI. So every pair of safety glasses should have an ANSI standard inside either the arm, and I think the end of the glasses. It just depends on the brand that you have. And then selecting the eye and face protection, some elements to consider. How effective is it? Does it fit properly? Are they durable? Does it restrict your vision? And those are some things that need to be looked at. And some of these older safety glasses are just terrible. They're terrible. I'm amazed at some of the safety glasses that I see at some of these trade shows, and the newer brands are really awesome. Oakley makes a pair. I think even Ray-Ban has them. But there's some really high-end safety glasses that your employees will want to wear. And that is the approach I have taken over the years. I don't get personal protection equipment that is going to be a burden to wear and just cause an injury. So I usually get the better type of wraparound safety glasses or the lighter pair. Of course, they're ANSI Z87, but you want to spend a little money on your PPE. It does make for a happier employee. And of course, if you need prescription glasses, the eye doctors will get the prescription in placed in that ANSI Z87 glass or frame. And then goggles. Goggles are always fun to wear. They fog up all the time. Although I do have some this waxy material that I found when I was out in Colorado, a snowboarder. I'm not going to give you the name of it, but if you guys want to email me or text me or get a hold of me, I'll give you the name brand. But it actually works. It works pretty good. And this person that gave it to us was a snowboarder, and I tried it out a few months ago on with mine, and it worked out really well. So there is stuff out there that will prevent fogging. It won't eliminate it. It'll minimize it. It won't prevent it. I shouldn't have said prevent. It will minimize it, but it minimizes it, and it does a really good job. So these are the different types of goggles, um, different types of face shield. And again, face shields are really cool these days. They have some really nice ergonomic type face shields. Welding shields are always coming up with really cool designs and ergonomic shaped, or not ergonomic, but really cool shaped welding shields, and very comfortable. And then you got laser safety goggles. These are, again, they're really nice one these days. Respirators. Respirators is probably the most burdensome type of personal protection equipment that one could wear. For many reasons, it does put a strain on your cardiovascular system. And so you want to make sure that you have a physical. Those of you who are wearing respirators, you must have clearance from a doctor. You just can't put on a respirator like the one you see here. You must have a physical. And you must have fit testing. You must have training. It's not just something you slap on one day and you go out and do your thing. You got to have training, and it needs to be training from a competent and qualified trainer. And you need to see a doctor, and you need to get clearance. So there's a process. And there are many different types of personal protection equipment such as, full face, half mask. There's various types of respirators. So when you pick out one, there's a process that you must follow. You have dust mask, which everybody in the world is familiar with these now. Do they eliminate dust? Yes, that's what they're designed for. Do they eliminate other things like viruses? I'm not so sure about that. That is not my area of expertise, but I tell you what, it's created a lot of stir in the community of manufacturing and the medical fields. Do they work? Do they don't work? I don't know. I'm not an expert in that area. But if you are required to wear a dust mask because of dust, wear it. It will help you. It will prevent the dust from getting into your lung. Now, half mask, if you're wearing it for chemicals or some acids or whatever it is, make sure you wear it. Make sure it fits correctly. And then you have powered air purifying respirators. These are amazing. The ones that are coming up with these days are very nice, very lightweight. I recommend them. I love using SCBAs. They're kind of a burden, but the air is very easy to access. It is limited with time, but in my opinion, having actually the best is the supplied air. But SCBAs are good as well. And again, you need training on this. You just can't go out, put one on. You need a medical evaluation. You need to clean your PPE. You need to store it properly. This is probably one of the biggest findings in most of the facilities I visit that require respirators is not keeping the respirator in the bags. I see it in every industry, food industry, distribution, chemical refineries, even construction. It's across the board. People just don't put these in their bags. And then hearing protection is definitely one of the personal protection equipment pieces that cause problems. I have more than once had an employee put the ones you see on the left screen into their ear, roll it up, put it in their ear, and push wax into their eardrum and cause an injury. I've had that happen more than one time, and it was very painful for the individual, and it was a recordable injury. So be careful when you're using the inner ear protection. I prefer the outer ear protection. They have some really good outer ear protection these days. But how do you know if something's too loud? Well, you have to get a dosimeter and do a sound study. You don't rely on your iPhone. The iPhone's good. It'll tell you, hey, it's loud in here. Even my watch tells me it's loud in here. When my dogs bark, it tells me it's loud. But is it triggering the OSHA requirement to wear hearing protection? You need to have a professional come in and evaluate that for you, okay? Just don't throw on a pair of inner ear protection or outer ear. You also need a program. You need to do, again, another physical or a audiogram. So anything over 85 can cause problems, and anything over 90 is is going to be, you need to wear personal protection equipment, inner ear protection or outer ear protection. And you need a hearing conservation program. So this is the chart that we use in terms of the duration and the sound levels. And these are the different kinds of I personally like the outer ear protection. I use those at the gun range, and they're very comfortable. They make really, really, really nice ones these days, and they're very, very user friendly. And I love this slide. So this is how you put in an inner ear protection, the one on the top right, into your ear. But I caution you, clean your ears out if you are going to do this. If not, you are running the risk of putting the inner ear protective device foam into your ear and pushing the wax back into your eardrum, and that will be painful. Got hand protection, various types of hand protection. Depending on what you're doing in your industry, you need to do an evaluation to determine what's best for you. 3M, it has a really good guide to walk you through the different kinds of chemicals that you're using, the breakthrough rate. So there's a lot of resources out there when it comes to gloves and any kind of PPE. 3M is a really good source. I used them over the years to help assess the kind of PPE to use, whether for gloves, respirators, you name it. They got a really good resource of, of information to help you with. Anti-vibration gloves, chemical resistant gloves. I really love the cut resistant gloves. Those have been very, very useful in so many industries that I've worked in. Then, of course, you got boots, steel toe. What kind of boots do you need? Do they need to be steel toe or composite? Um, do they need a metatarsal? Are they chemical resistant? So these are things that we need to make sure that we're evaluating properly. I had a client last week who had a new employee do a process and didn't have the proper boots on, and unfortunately the person was exposed to some acid which burned their foot. So before you even put an employee out on the floor, you got to give them the personal protection equipment before, not after. Okay, you got to do it before. As a manager, as a business owner, you're responsible for their safety. If you're not giving them the right equipment to do the job safely, the responsibility is going to fall on you. Now, these are the different kinds of personal protection equipment boots that we have here. They should meet some sort of ANSI standard. All the local boot places will have these standards readily available, so there's not a big issue with that. But make sure you standardize your boots, Red Wing or whatever boot company you're using, and make sure that you read the safety data sheet. Make sure if you're dealing with the acid, any kind of acid or anything that could break down a boot, make sure it's the right kind of boot. And then, of course, you have the protective clothing, aprons, high vis, all kinds of different Tyvek, vests, jackets, aprons, full body suits. So these are all the different kinds of personal protection equipment that you can give to your employees if you do an assessment. You got various types of PPE levels. You got A, which is the highest level in most cases, level B, level C, and level D. So this is kind of the general overview. Like I said, it's not going to go into detail, but an assessment must be done. And I caution you, if you're just putting on PPE just because, go ahead and put on a respirator, no big deal. It's, it could be a big deal. Your employee could pass out because they don't have enough lung capacity to breathe in the air that's filtered. That's a big deal. Having safety glasses that don't match up well and maybe fog up and cause an employee to get hurt. That's another issue that could happen. So doing a proper assessment, getting a professional in there, assessing the potential risk, and creating an action plan is the best way to go. The employer is required to perform a hazard assessment. It must be done. You could either hire ROI Safety Services or your insurance company. I don't know if they would do it. They might do it, but we will do that all day long. We love doing site assessments. We love working with each of our clients, and everyone's a little different. There's things that go on during the day that we find, and this is really common in our business. We go to an employee and we start interviewing them about what they're doing. And next thing you know, we're finding all these hazards that the owner or the manager never even knew about. Like, I did not know that you were doing that. Well, that's why you need a professional to go in there and do the site assessment. So now, who pays for the PPE? That's the question everybody wants to know. So the answer to that question is the employer most of the time. Generally speaking, most of the time, the employer must pay for it. Now, are there conditions to this rule? There are, but not very many of them. And even those are, in my opinion, a little gray area. But they being the employer should be paying for the PPE for every employee, at least in the U.S. So they must be paying for the boots, the safety glasses, the goggles, the hard hats, the welding, PPE. This is all the employer's responsibility. Now, there are some conditions to this. For example, if the employee keeps losing respirators, that could be a problem. I dealt with this in many different types of industries where we would put in, hey, if you lose it, we're going to charge you to replace it. Is that legitimate? Absolutely. I agree with that. Now, is that a gray area? I think it could be. But I haven't seen too many issues with that. But I'm going to be upfront. If you lose the respirator again, I'm going to charge you. I'm going to take it out of your paycheck. That's probably an HR issue. I don't know, but these they need to be responsible for it. So I create an agreement with employees for PPE, and they sign it, and I put in there, your responsibility is to take care of your gloves, your respirators, your aprons, your hard hats, and if you lose them, we'll probably replace the first round if it's a legitimate reason why you lost it. And I don't know, maybe your car got stolen, who knows? But if it's something that's a pattern, I lost my NIOSH, or not my NIOSH, but my 3M respirator. It's a full face. Those things are like $150, $200. If you're on your second one in 6 months, that's a problem. So we got to put in a policy and run it by your HR team. Make sure it makes sense for you guys. Employer payment exemptions. There's some non-specialty safety toe protection if you want to put that on them. If you want them to pay for things that might enhance their PPE, I like that. If you got $180 budget for Red Wings, and they want to get the $300, by all means, go. They'll pay the rest. And then everyday clothing, skin creams, and that sort of thing, lifting belts. And the employee is required to properly wear the PPE. So if they're not wearing it properly, or if they're wearing hard hats backwards, those are some things that I see all the time. Maintenance, care for the PPE, and this is in that form that we create, and we have them sign it that they're going to take care of it, clean it, and make sure that it's functioning properly. Well, that concludes our training. I appreciate everybody who was able to watch this video. It is on YouTube, and I hope that you can share this. This is it's not a comprehensive training on personal protection equipment. It does give you the overall understanding of how to manage PPE, the importance of it, the importance of following the pyramid, and getting a good start on, hey, we need to evaluate our processes. We need to be responsible for what we're giving our employees, and we need to pay for our PPE, get everyone enrolled. And of course, if you need help, we're here for you. ROI Safety Services. We are in Southern California, and have a wonderful day.